question I was asked in connection to a recent morning jolt was, okay, but how do I walk in a heavenly calling? And good morning this morning, welcome to this morning's jolt. And that is a great question, and it leads us to a great topic, and it is about the Holy Spirit in a believer's life. We cannot leave out John 14:17 when we talk about this. This is in the Gospels, speaking about the birth of the church in a kind of a hidden way, but in a very deep way. Jesus is saying, he's giving a promise that he is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it sees him not, neither knows him. But you know him, for he dwells with you and shall be in you. And that, of course, happened at Acts 12, and we know that the Holy Spirit at that time came down to earth and actually came down to indwell every believer. And this is something beautiful that belongs to all of us, and is a very, very powerful truth, as is attested in Ephesians 1:13. And don't get lost in this. This is a very encouraging thought. It says, in whom you also trusted. This is about Christ, of course. In whom you also trusted, after that you heard the word of truth. So you heard the gospel, you trusted Christ, the gospel of your salvation, in whom also after you believed, you were sealed with that Holy Spirit of promise. That is awesome. It says to us, it shows to us that when you believed, you were sealed with the Holy Spirit of promise. This is very important because some believers doubt whether they have the Holy Spirit after being born again. But this verse clearly says, Paul clearly says to the Ephesians, that after you believed, you did receive the Holy Spirit. He speaks to other churches like this too, but let me just ask, do you know what that means, the seal of the Holy Spirit? Seal is like, it is like a branding of an animal, actually. What does that mean? And in our case, it means two things, because the seal has these two senses. Number one is it shows ownership, like that of the branding of an animal. Oh, this is my cow because my mark is on it. Okay, so we belong to God. We have not been branded. Of course, the Holy Spirit came into us. That is an amazing privilege. It is like a medal of unspeakable honor in our lives that the Godhead dwells in us. But it shows that we belong to God. Okay, that's number one. And the other is, the other meaning of a seal is authentication, right? There is a letter, I'm sending a letter, and as I send the letter, I put my seal on it in order to authenticate it, to show that it was written by me, and the recipient looks at the seal and knows, yes, it was written by him. So God is saying, by sending the Holy Spirit into your life, you actually belong to me, and says to the whole spirit world, this one is mine. This one is mine. I think that's very, very encouraging. And in this portion, I just want to mention this because, like, the Corinthians were not a great, very spiritually acute bunch of believers. I mean, God bless them. God has used their church to give us the example of so many problems in churches, and they have made so many mistakes. But it's very useful to us. But Paul speaks to them this way, 2 Corinthians 1. Verse 22, he says, this is about God, who has also sealed us and given the earnest of the Spirit in our hearts. Sealed us, Paul is saying, me and you, and has given the earnest of his Spirit into our hearts, me and you. Paul is saying to a bunch of believers who have made so many mistakes in the faith. Well, definitely in church life, they were like a mess. And yet Paul is saying, because sometimes as a believer you could ask, but I have made mistakes, many mistakes. I have walked without God in this life, even though a believer for a long time. So does that mean I don't have the Holy Spirit? But according to the testimony of these verses, no, you do have the Holy Spirit. But whether he can influence your life, that's a different question. But you do have the Holy Spirit. The seal of the Holy Spirit is on you. The demon world knows, the angelic world knows where you belong. Maybe you're confused, but they are not, and you shouldn't be either. And this is such an encouragement. How do I walk in a heavenly calling? One answer to that is by having the Holy Spirit. This is why it's so important that we're born again, and this is why we rejoice in this fact. God bless you with these thoughts, and walk in the Spirit today. God bless you. Hope to see you soon again.